The Biden administration is laser focused on kind of the two metrics of GDP being positive and then also jobs. Every year Biden's been in office, or every month Biden's been in office, there's been positive job growth. Unemployment's still below 4%, which is a historically low level. So those are kind of the two aspects the Biden administration is trying to hammer heading into the election.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by economics reporter Zach Halaschak. Zach, we've gotten some, I wouldn't call it bad news, but certainly changed news about GDP earlier this year. What happened?
So the way that GDP works is there's three different updates. So as data becomes more available, they'll change around slightly, usually slightly, the estimate of what GDP was in each quarter. So the most recent one's the second revision, the preliminary for first quarter of 2024 for this year. So the first one showed that GDP was coming in at 1.6%, and the second one, which is an update to that, came in a little colder, so the economy grew at about 1.3% in the first quarter. And so, you know, that's not good anytime you see GDP shrinking, and that 1.6 even at the preliminary estimate was much smaller than the 3.4%, which was notched in the fourth quarter of last year. So whenever you see economic output kind of trending down, it's not good, but you have to bear in mind that it's still positive. It's not declining. And you know, a lot of people are talking about recessions and fear of recession. Usually a recession is marked by 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. So we're not there yet. But again, anytime you see a lower GDP number than, you know, the preceding quarter, it's always something to keep an eye on.
And this is one of the metrics for the economy that the Biden administration is really focused on, because it has been growing, and we've stayed out of recession thus far, even with some money tightening to try to get inflation back down under control.
Yeah, absolutely. The Biden administration is laser focused on kind of the two metrics of GDP being positive and then also jobs. Every year Biden's been in office, or every month Biden's been in office, there's been positive job growth. Unemployment's still below 4%, which is a historically low level. So those are kind of the two aspects the Biden administration is trying to hammer heading into the election. But we also have to bear in mind the Fed has raised rates to very high levels, and the idea behind that is it lowers inflation. The one thing that Biden's trying to distract from or not talk about, the biggest thing in voters' minds right now is inflation. And so the Fed has hiked interest rates up in order to push that down. Unfortunately, when interest rates are high, it typically means GDP tends to move down and jobs tend to be lost. So those two aspects, those two GDP and job growth, are the two things that are still hanging on there, but we'll see as the Fed keeps interest rates higher, that could start to change throughout the year.
So President Biden's likely Republican opponent, former President Donald Trump, has developed a new interest in cryptocurrency. Yeah,
he's kind of done a 180 in his policy positioning on crypto and Bitcoin. I think it was back in 2021, shortly after he lost in the 2020 election, he was on Fox News, and he was asked about Bitcoin, and he called it just blatantly a scam. And in 2019, he opined on Twitter about how crypto is kind of not a great area because it could be used to facilitate illegal drugs sales and, you know, weapon sales, all that sort of dark web stuff. And now if you look at he spoke this past weekend at the Libertarian Convention, and if you look at his comments there, it's a complete departure from those previous positions. He basically positions himself as the advocate for the crypto community, a Bitcoin bull. And, you know, even went as far as saying that if he were to be elected, he would free Ross Ulbricht, who was, you know, a very controversial figure.
Dark web figure.
Yeah, he created Silk Road, which is kind of the biggest and first dark web illegal drug trading platform, and was sentenced to life in prison for, you know, that facilitating that platform. And so now Trump, you know, back in 2019 is tweeting about how he doesn't like crypto because it allows illegal drug sales. Now he's saying wants to free the guy who created the biggest platform for that. So it's a big reversal, and it's interesting that it comes in an election year, especially in contrast to Biden. Biden, for crypto advocates, they've kind of seen him as anti-crypto, even though he hasn't spoken too much specifically about crypto. A lot of his agencies have kind of cracked down. You have the SEC, the CFPB, have kind of gone after crypto, and so I think that with this move, Trump and his campaign are trying to make him the crypto candidate and draw a contrast between he and Biden.
And maybe appeal to some of these libertarian-leaning voters.
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a growing contingent of voters who are one-issue voters when it comes to crypto. And, they might not care what Biden and Trump think on other issues, but they're going to go for the person who's the most freedom-oriented toward the cryptocurrency and digital asset space. So I think that it's a very clear attempt to try to pick up those votes, and we'll see if it's going to be a firm policy position for Trump going forward or he'll pivot back. Obviously, as we know with former President Trump, he changes sometimes on the issues as he goes along. So be interesting to see.
Cryptic. Thank you, Zach.
Very cryptic, yeah.
You can read Zach and the rest of our policy team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.